Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack complex topics, sift through the sources, and really get you the key info, fast. Today, we're looking at something incredibly tough, a story that just, shook everything up, the Chris Benoit double murder-suicide. It's about how this celebrated wrestler's life ended so horrifically, leaving just a wake of questions impacting an entire industry. So our goal here, our mission for this deep dive, is to lay out the timeline as clearly as we can, explore the different ideas about why it happened, the motives, and then look at the consequences, which were huge, really changed things in pro wrestling and even beyond.
Absolutely. And to do that, we're drawing on quite a mix of things: official police reports, the hard facts. Then there are medical findings, which are critical here, plus industry reactions, timelines. It's a lot. You really have to look at it from all angles to even begin to understand something this layered, this tragic.
Yeah, exactly. So the big question for you listening is, how can one single event lead to so many different theories, so many unanswered questions? We're going to try and help you navigate through all of that today.
Okay, so let's really start digging into this.
Yeah.
The world found out Monday, June 25th, 2007. That's when police went into the house. But the really chilling part is this whole thing had been unfolding for days already, behind closed doors. The Fayette County Sheriff's Department, they were asked by WWE to do a wellness check.
Right, because of some strange texts coworkers had received.
Exactly. And what they found, well, it set off this chain of revelations that honestly we're still trying to process. It really did. The investigation managed to piece together a pretty precise and, chilling timeline. It covered those 3 days ending June 24th. It seems to have started Friday, June 22nd. Nancy Benoit was found. She was in an upstairs office. And the details are just grim. It points to a very deliberate act. She was bound, feet and wrists. Death was by asphyxiation. Officials figured it was from a knee pressed into her back while a cord was pulled around her neck. Her body was wrapped in a towel. And maybe the most haunting detail, a Bible was left right there beside her body. There was some blood found under her head, which might suggest, some struggle. But investigators also noted there weren't signs of an immediate, big fight.
Wow, and then the time between the murders, Saturday, what happened then?
Well, Saturday, June 23rd, that's when Chris Benoit seems to start building this false story. Around 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, he left a voicemail for Chavo Guerrero, a friend and coworker. Said he'd overslept, missed his flight. Chavo said he sounded, quote, tired and groggy.
Okay, so Chavo was concerned.
Yeah, understandably.
Yeah.
He called back, but Chris didn't answer. Then, just 12 minutes later, Benoit calls Chavo back. This time, he claims he was on the phone with Delta Airlines because Nancy and Daniel were sick with food poisoning.
Food poisoning, okay.
And then later that day, he apparently told another coworker that Nancy was actually vomiting blood and Daniel was also vomiting. So the story escalated.
Just awful. And as the timeline moves forward, the details about his son, Daniel, they're arguably even more disturbing. What did the investigation find about Daniel's murder?
That was Sunday, June 24th, right? The last day.
Yes, Sunday. Daniel was suffocated in his own bedroom. And just like with Nancy, a Bible was left near his body. The autopsy showed internal throat injuries, but significantly, no bruises.
No bruises.
Yeah.
What does that suggest?
It suggests a method that wasn't, blunt force, maybe smothering or a different kind of strangulation. But what's even more chilling, they found Xanax in Daniel's system.
Analysis.
In a child.
Exactly. The implication being he was sedated, likely unconscious when he was killed. And there's another strange detail. A large butcher knife under his bed.
Was it used?
No.
No.
Investigators confirmed it wasn't used in either murder. Just another confusing piece of the scene.
That leads to something really controversial that came up right away. This claim that Daniel had Fragile X syndrome. Chris Jericho, who was close to Benoit, initially said the symptoms fit Daniel to a T. Did that hold up? Was there any medical proof?
No, it didn't hold up.
Yeah.
Jericho himself actually took it back later in his 2011 book, Undisputed. He wrote very clearly, it turned out that Daniel didn't have Fragile X.
Okay.
And beyond that, the district attorney, Ballard, put out a statement. Said that sources who saw Daniel's medical files found zero mention of any pre-existing conditions, mental or physical. Teachers also said he was doing fine in school, right on par with his peers. So that whole Fragile X idea was never established. Just a theory that turned out to be false.
Right. Also, on that Sunday, June 24th, very early in the morning, between 3:51 and 3:58 a.m., these really weird texts get sent from both Chris's and Nancy's phones to coworkers.
Yeah, I remember hearing about those.
4 of them just gave the family's address, and a 5th one said the dogs were in the pool area. and a garage side door was open. It sounds almost like he's telling someone where to find them, doesn't it?
It's incredibly eerie.
And around this time, he also calls WWE talent relations. Says his son is vomiting, they're at the hospital, so he'll miss the event he was scheduled for.
And then finally, on that same Sunday, Chris Benoit took his own life by hanging in his weight room. He used a cord from a weight machine, fashioned a noose, and released about 240 pounds of weight.
More than his body weight.
Yeah, about 6 pounds more. It caused strangulation. The DA noted the pull-down bar was off the machine and he was hanging from the pulley. And following that disturbing pattern, a third Bible was left right there on his weight machine.
One question that always comes up is, was there a note? Did he leave anything explaining this?
Well, initially, no. During the immediate search of the house, no suicide note was found, which just added to the confusion. But later, much later, something was discovered. Not in the house, though. It was found inside a Bible that was sent, along with Benoit's personal stuff, to his first wife, Martina, up in Canada.
Really? What did it say?
According to Michael Benoit, Chris's father, that Bible had a handwritten note inside. It said, "I'm preparing to leave this earth."
Wow, I'm preparing to leave this earth. Chilling.
Yeah. So that brings us to the really hard question. Motive. What could possibly explain these horrific actions? It's so important to look at the different ideas people put forward without, saying anyone is the answer. It's just too complex.
Right.
One major theory came from Christopher Nowinski, the former wrestler who's done a lot of work on concussions. He suggested Benoit might have been suffering from severe brain damage, from repeated untreated concussions over his career.
Yeah, Nowinski pointed out Benoit was known for taking risks, right? Like chair shots.
Exactly. He said Benoit would take a chair shot to the back of the head, which is stupid, just highlighting the risks involved. And the tests done on Benoit's brain later, what did they show?
The findings were staggering. Julian Bales, the neurosurgeon at West Virginia University who examined the brain, he said Benoit's brain looked like that of an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient.
85 years old.
Yeah. The test confirmed severe CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, damage in all 4 lobes plus the brainstem. Bales basically concluded that years of concussions could lead to dementia, severe behavioral issues.
And Benoit's father came to believe this was the main cause, right?
He did. He felt strongly that brain damage was the leading factor, but WWE, they pushed back on that.
They did. WWE dismissed the CTE link as speculative.
Speculative, despite those findings. Did they ever really explain why they dismissed it beyond just calling it speculative?
Not really in depth, publicly. Their stance seemed to be that the science wasn't totally conclusive in linking CTE directly to these specific violent acts. They framed it more as a medical condition Benoit had, but maybe not the trigger for the murders themselves. It allowed them to kind of distance the company from the immediate cause, even with the mounting evidence about CTE's effects on behavior and judgment. They drew a line, basically, on direct causation.
Okay. So CTE was one major theory. What else came up immediately?
Steroids. That was the immediate media narrative, wasn't it? Roid rage.
You're right. That term was everywhere.
WWE's lawyer, Jerry McDevitt, he countered that pretty quickly. He said Benoit was prescribed testosterone, but as part of testosterone replacement therapy, TRT, which he described as, fairly common for guys who'd used steroids in the past and had testicular damage as a result.
Okay, so just to be clear for everyone listening, TRT, testosterone replacement therapy. It involves testosterone, which sounds like steroids. But is the purpose different here? Is it treatment versus abuse?
It's generally considered a medical treatment. It's prescribed to counteract long-term effects of past steroid use, which can mess up the body's own testosterone production. It's not the same as someone actively cycling steroids for muscle growth or performance. It's therapy for a diagnosed condition.
Gotcha.
Now, there was a federal investigation looking into deliveries Benoit got from online pharmacies like Signature Pharmacy and MedX Life.
Right.
But McDevitt and also Dr. Gary Wadler from the World Anti-Doping Agency, they argued that the killings seemed very planned, premeditated, not like a sudden uncontrollable rage. And they maintained the testosterone found was legally prescribed for that TRT. So that directly challenged the simple roid rage story.
Okay, so CTE, potential substance issues related to TRT, but maybe not roid rage. What other factors were considered?
Marital problems and a history of domestic issues. That came up too. Nancy had actually filed for divorce back in May 2003. The filing mentioned alleged domestic abuse by Chris.
She filed for divorce. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, though she withdrew the filing a few months later, in August 2003. Then in February 2008, there was a report in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. It cited a sheriff's office report suggesting Nancy might have suspected Chris was having an affair.
An affair? With who?
Reportedly with another WWE diva. And the report also mentioned they might have been arguing over a life insurance policy.
Wow. So there were potentially deep-seated personal issues there, too, from years before.
It seems that way.
Yep.
Just adding another layer to an already incredibly complex situation.
So this whole tragedy, with the medical factors, the personal issues, the behavioral questions, it didn't just end with the family. The impact spread throughout the wrestling world. How did WWE specifically handle something this massive, this damaging?
Well, their initial response was incredibly fast. And at first glance, seemed compassionate. They sent out alerts via their mobile service, put up a statement online, and they actually canceled the live Raw show scheduled for that Monday, June 25th.
Right, wasn't that the show that was supposed to be like a fake memorial for Vince McMahon's character?
Exactly. Pure coincidence, but yeah. They scrapped that and replaced it with the 3-hour tribute show to Chris Benoit. His life, his career, past matches, comments from other wrestlers.
But that didn't last long, did it? The tone shifted dramatically.
No, it didn't. As the horrifying details started coming out, things changed very quickly. Vince McMahon himself recorded a statement that aired before the ECW show the next night, expressing shock, disgust.
And then came the erasure.
Pretty much, yeah. WWE began systematically distancing themselves from Benoit. Mentions of him basically vanished from their website, except for, like, bare bones results and title histories.
Yeah.
They pulled that tribute episode from international broadcasts, started editing Benoit out of archived footage.
Did they edit Nancy out too?
Initially, maybe, but her appearances did eventually return to archive content. But Chris was largely gone, merchandise was pulled, he was even removed from the WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2008 video game that was coming out.
Wow, the video game too.
Yeah. Though, interestingly, his signature move, the Crippler Crossface, was put back into the game series a couple of years later in SmackDown vs. Raw 2010.
Huh. But he is still technically acknowledged somewhere.
Yes, he's listed in the official WWE encyclopedia. It details his career up until he lost the World Heavyweight Championship. So, not a complete memory hole, but a very deliberate distancing in most public-facing ways.
And how did the wider wrestling industry react? Wrestlers, other figures?
It was really varied. You had comments like Hulk Hogan calling Benoit peaceful, saying it seemed like a domestic problem.
Yeah.
Kurt Angle said it wasn't WWE's fault, not Vince McMahon's fault. Eric Bischoff was critical of the media, jumping to conclusions, saying he didn't have enough info to speculate.
But others were more open about the impact.
Yeah, wrestlers like Edge, Adam Copeland, and Chavo Guerrero Jr., they spoke pretty openly about how deeply Benoit's death affected them personally and professionally. CM Punk called it a pretty low point in everyone's life. You could feel the shock and sadness across the board, even with different takes on blame or cause. And there's an interesting side note. Benoit was inducted into the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame back in 2003. After the murders, they actually held a recall election in 2008 to see if he should be removed, which is super rare.
What happened? Was he removed?
No, he was actually retained. But apparently by a really narrow margin. It just shows how divided even the hardcore wrestling community was.
Yeah, wow. This tragedy also brought attention from outside the wrestling bubble, right? Government scrutiny.
Oh, definitely. The U.S. House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform launched an investigation specifically into WWE's talent wellness policy. The chairman at the time, Henry Waxman, sent a letter in early 2009. He asked the Office of National Drug Control Policy to really look into steroid use in pro wrestling.
What were his main concerns?
His letter pointed out some pretty startling numbers. In the first year of WWE's testing program, starting March 2006, something like 40% of wrestlers tested positive for steroids or other drugs.
40%, even with the testing program in place.
Yep, even after getting warnings. Waxman also highlighted what he saw as light punishments and how easily wrestlers seemed to get therapeutic use exemptions, 2Es. There was even a quote from a WWE contracted doctor, Dr. Tracy Ray, claiming he saw shadiness in almost every 2E case he looked at.
That sounds damning. So, with all that investigation, the committee hearings, the troubling findings, what actually came of it? Did Congress take action against WWE?
You know, despite all that scrutiny, all the headlines, by June 2009, nope, no actual congressional action was taken against WWE or any other wrestling company.
Really? No new laws or regulations?
No. The investigation definitely put pressure on WWE. They did strengthen their wellness policy afterwards, but it didn't lead to direct government oversight or regulation of the industry's drug policies.
Okay, let's circle back to the science for a moment. The toxicology reports. They were released by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation in July 2007. What did they actually find?
Right, the tox reports give us some concrete data amidst all the speculation. For Nancy Benoit, they found hydrocodone, hydromorphone, and Xanax. But all were at therapeutic levels consistent with prescription use. She also had a blood alcohol level of 0.184. But they couldn't be sure if that was from drinking or just changes after death. Importantly, they ruled out that Chris had sedated her.
Okay, so she wasn't drugged beforehand. What about Daniel?
Daniel's report showed Xanax in his system. The DA specifically noted this was not normal for a child. So the belief is strong that he was sedated, likely unconscious, before he was killed. They ruled out a drug overdose as the cause of death, though.
Could they test him for steroids?
Unfortunately, no. They couldn't perform tests for steroids or human growth hormone on Daniel because they didn't have a urine sample.
And Chris Benoit himself, what did his toxicology show?
Chris had Xanax and hydrocodone too, again at therapeutic levels, consistent with having prescriptions. His urine showed elevated levels of testosterone cypionate. That suggests he'd taken it somewhat recently.
But was it the roid rage kind of steroid?
No. Besides that testosterone cypionate, which aligns with the TRT explanation, they found no other artificial steroids in his urine. They also found no GHB. There was another early user, the date rape drug, and he tested negative for alcohol.
Okay, so if we put all three reports together, what's the main takeaway? Does it point strongly one way or just add more complexity? It seems to undermine the simple roid rage idea, maybe.
Exactly. I think that's the key nugget, as you put it. For Chris and Nancy, the drugs found were consistent with prescriptions, therapeutic use, not necessarily abuse causing immediate rage. Daniel having Xanax is the huge red flag, strongly suggesting sedation and premeditation regarding his death. So yeah, it definitely complicates the simple roid rage narrative. It doesn't rule out long-term effects of substances or TRT, but it points away from a sudden, uncontrolled outburst. It shifts the focus more towards those other potential factors, the CTE, the marital stress perhaps influencing a more calculated, though still horrific, sequence of actions. It adds grim detail while challenging the easy answers.
And that connects to the story of his doctor, right? Dr. Aston.
Yes, Dr. Philip C. Aston III, Benoit's personal physician. Sometime after Benoit's death, Dr. Aston ended up pleading guilty to 175 counts of illegally prescribing drugs.
175 counts.
Yeah, often without even examining patients first. He got sentenced to 10 years in prison. Now, that case wasn't directly tied to Benoit's death in the legal sense, but it certainly paints a picture of how easily some medications might have been obtained back then. It highlights issues with pharmaceutical oversight, maybe?
Just when you think the story can't get any stranger, there's the whole Wikipedia thing. That was bizarre.
Oh, that was incredibly bizarre. Almost unbelievable, really. A statement about Nancy Benoit's death was added to Chris Benoit's English Wikipedia page. Get this, 14 hours before the police actually found the bodies.
14 hours before? How is that possible? What did it say?
The edit added this specific phrase. Chris Benoit was replaced by Johnny Nitro for the ECW World Championship match at Vengeance, as Benoit was not there due to personal issues stemming from the death of his wife Nancy. That part, stemming from the death of his wife Nancy, that was added at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time on June 25th. Police didn't find the bodies until 2:30 p.m. that same day.
Okay, that's just weird. And they traced the edit.
They did. And this makes it even stranger. The IP address came back to Stamford, Connecticut.
Stamford, where WWE headquarters is located.
Exactly. The person who made the edit remained anonymous, but later claimed it was just a huge coincidence.
A coincidence? How did they explain it?
Police investigated, seized computer equipment. They called the posting an unbelievable hindrance to their case. But in the end, they seemed to believe the guy. Said he'd apparently just seen rumors online somewhere, maybe on forums, and made the edit based on that speculation. They decided not to press charges, believing he wasn't actually involved.
Just wow. A huge coincidence indeed. What a strange footnote to an already baffling case.
It really is. Yeah. And, this whole deep dive, looking at everything, it just hammers home how incredibly complex this tragedy was. It wasn't just one thing. It seems like it was this awful convergence of factors.
Yeah.
You have the potential severe brain damage from CTE. You have reported drug use, even if it was prescribed therapy. You have signs of underlying marital strife.
Yeah.
And layered over all that, the intense, physically punishing world of professional wrestling.
Yeah.
It's a devastating example of how someone's personal life, their job, their physical health, their mental health, how it can all get tangled together with just the worst possible outcome.
It really is. And in this case, it's such a stark reminder, isn't it, that getting information, getting knowledge, especially quickly, often means you're dealing with incomplete pieces, with conflicting viewpoints. Even when you have police reports, medical science, sometimes the clear-cut answers just aren't there, especially when you're looking at the extremes of human behavior and so many things crashing together like this. So maybe a final thought for you to consider as we wrap up. Given everything this case brought to light, the physical risks, the pressures, the mental health aspects, what responsibility do big organizations, big industries have for the well-being of the people who perform for them? It's a heavy question, and it's one that echoes far beyond just the wrestling ring, even today.